Right folks, back again. Just to recap on this, there is a rubber damper that goes on here, and there's also a couple of other thrust washers which look to be copper or brass, which makes me think that they are rubbing against that. I'm not sure, but I'm going to go and check that out. We're looking in the manual, and if we look at the way this works here, we've got the rubber damper there. Then we got a washer, which is on the back of the gear. Then the needle rollers. Then the thrust washer, which is on the back of the Sprag Bearing. I'm going to run through that and how that works. Then, of course, you've got the plate, which bolts onto the back, which I haven't taken off. And then the actual rotor, and then the stator. Don't know if you can see all that, guys. For those of you who don't know about this, I'm going to try and give you a bit of a heads up on this. What we got here is a Sprag Bearing. It's quite clever design. It works really on the principle of jamming. Just going to put this little chap here back. It goes on this little spring in there. Goes into his little tunnel, and I'll put the roller in there. Now this is quite clever actually. I don't know if you can see this. How does this work? Well, for the ones that don't know, it spins one way and bites, and then when the engine's running, the engine overtakes it, so then it's free running, and it's quite clever. This is the gear, which is connected to the crankshaft, and if we put this over there like that, just spin it backwards for the rollers to go in, and the rollers now are actually in. You can just see the rollers, and if I turn it over, there's the rollers through the spokes, but not too worried. Let's go back. There's one roller, and bear in mind this is the gear, and this is connected to the crank. So the gear turns it like so. Once this engine's running, this is free to rotate with the engine, the crankshaft, which is quite clever. Obviously these go in there, rollers, it rolls on that. This is all oil fed, so it's well lubricated. And that one with the chamfer on the inside, according to the manual, goes on with the chamfer in. So let's go and check that out. Be back in a tick. Morning everybody, back in the workshop again. We have a problem. Hopefully it's not going to be a major problem. Let me just see if I can get you on this. This rotor that I showed you yesterday is a very nice piece of kit, but it's not quite the same as the original. So what are we going to do? Well, the issue is here. When this is bolted onto the let me push that across there. You see it? When this is bolted on or placed onto the crankshaft and the bolt screwed into the crankshaft, it doesn't come right up against that to pull it on to the taper. So what I need to do, I've got several options. What I could do is I could make a spacer, or I could, which is probably not what I really want to do, I could pack that out with washers. Now the size of that, there is a chamfer on there, so we've got to be a bit careful. So I'd have to use washers there, probably about 15mm diameter at the base of the bolt. I don't know if you can see that. And the rest of the bolt, the rest of the shaft will be somewhere in the region of 12mm hole, as opposed to 15mm hole at the very base, because you don't want that pulling on the 12mm, because obviously it's not going to seat flat on this bit here. So today I'm going to try and cut up a piece of steel, and my first option, which I'm going to try, is going to be to turn down a spacer. Now obviously you need a lathe to do this, and you know I'm lucky enough to have a lathe, and that's just fortunate. If you haven't got the lathe and you are in this situation, you could look into packing out this area with the washers so that the bolt is about there, and it actually comes home when you tighten it up and pulls this tight into the taper of the crankshaft. But I'm gonna start doing the. I'm gonna start preparing some steel. I'll come back to you in a while. Hi folks. This is the steel I'm going to use. I'm going to cut a piece across here, and I'm going to drill a hole there, which is going to be the primary hole for the actual shaft. Sorry, for the bolt, like that. Now the idea being then is that that will give me enough meat just about on the sides. So I'm going to try and get that as square as I can. And what I'll probably do is when I've drilled that hole, I will put a bolt through it. I may weld it, I just a tack weld. I will put it in the lathe using the bolt as a shaft to grab it with and turn this down round. And the thickness of this is probably going to be just the job. But I'll come back to you later. Right, cut me steel. Here we are. Now to get the centre line, I'm going to go from corner to corner and scribe. Now I should use some ink, but I can see that. Don't know if you guys can see that. It's a line there. There you go. Go to the other corner. That'll give me my centre. Should really be doing this on a flat surface rather than on top of a rag. So I'll centre pop that. I'll do that on the vise. Can't really show you this, folks. Tricky. Just getting the camera. Let's have a go anyway. There it is on the vise. It's just the anvil bit of the vise here. So let me get me centre pop. There it is. So now if you can, going to see if I can place that. Still got magnetic filings from that old rotor on the punch. I think that's about right. One good bash. Hold it still. Another good bash. Now that is obviously to enable me to keep the drill steady. I wish I had my pillar drill up and running, but I haven't. It's over there still disconnected because we've only been here a year and I've still got loads of work to do, but the bike, I've got to get this bike back together anyway. That there is the centre pop, and I'm now going to see if we can turn that. Now first of all, I'm going to put the hole through there. I'm not going to film this because everybody knows how to drill a hole. I'm going to drill that. I'll come back when I've got a bolt through it, ready to go in the lathe, and hopefully you can see then. See you later. Right, chaps, back again. This is what this looks like now it's been put together. Now, I'm hoping that'll be enough meat on there to hold it in the chuck on the lathe. And the idea being is we'll just see if we can turn these corners off, get it round so that by the time we finish turning, it will be flush there. Then I will obviously put it in the chuck and bore out the hole for the shaft to go through. Sorry, the bolt. I keep saying the bolt. I keep saying the shaft. It's the bolt shaft, I should say. So it goes through there, and then I've got my spacer to go on there like that. Let's see how we go. I won't film the turn-in because it's pretty boring and it takes a while. I'll be back later. Right, folks, lassies and chaps and gentlemen and ladies, back again. Don't know if you can see that. That's the finished product of turning the outside. It's still locked onto the bolt, as you can see. I'm going to undo this now, and then I'm going to put it back in the lathe and face it off so it's nice and clean. I'll be back later. Bye. Right, folks, back again. Started off with a square. Turn this down. Now, if you look closely, because of the bolt, there's a chamfer on the edge of that bolt. I've had to put a chamfer in the spacer, but that now fits on there snug. Well, I say snug, it doesn't interfere with the chamfer, so it's down flat. So both faces are true and they meet. So that will then go in there. The bolt will hold it on the shaft, and it will pull it home with the aid of that chamfer. Before, as I explained, this bolt wasn't going right home, so we need to space it out. The most important thing, of course, is we must put it on that way, not that way, because as you can see, that won't go all the way home. So take it off, put it on, and we'll go and test that on the bike. I'll be back later. Right, folks, we're back over to the bike. I'm just going to try everything up onto the shaft. There goes the rotor. Bit of oil leaking out there. We oiled it right up on the bearings, so you'd expect that, I guess. Now, just in case a lot of you don't know, this is your back axle, your shaft. That can also be used as a puller. So you tighten that up, it pushes on the crankshaft. You've got a hole through there, ready made. And that will push off this one. This is obviously when you're taking it all apart. Just going to put that down on the bench a minute. Right, just to test, what was concerning me was, when this was home, spacer, bolt, putting it home. And I'm going to tighten that up. Just gently. I'm not going to go crazy. I just want to make sure that it goes all the way home. We've got the spacer on the right way. I don't know what the torque setting is on this. I think I'm going to have to check that up. But see, it's not spinning on the... I don't know if you can see it with the pistons. This is still spinning on the shaft. It's not bitten on the taper yet. So we'll tighten up a little bit more. Now it's biting on the shaft. Biting on the shaft. Now the thing that I was worried about was because I've pulled this bolt out a little bit because of the added width of the spacer, I was worried whether it might clash on the inside of this. I don't know if you can see that down here in the middle. And I thought what I might do is put some plasticine and measure the gap, so that if I push plasticine on there and then push this on the trial fit, I can then measure the width of the plasticine. But when I push that on there, that's the magnets pulling it. It's now on the dowels. Now, I don't believe it may well be that it's too proud. In which case, if it is, and it looks as if it may be, it's difficult to say yet. If it is too proud, then obviously I will turn the spacer down and take off what is necessary in order to test it. I've got some blue tack over there, so I might use that now. I'm going to do a little bit of a check and I'll be back later. Right, folks, back again. I've just put a little bit of blue tack on there. I don't know if it's going to hold, because probably would be best if I can get the words out, to clean the top of that bolt. But we'll see how we go anyway. So, I'm hoping that this nut won't touch the bottom of that casing. Don't know if you can see that right down there because of the spacer. Here we go. Now it could be that rock, don't know if you can hear that, could be down to the fact that we are dealing with a protruding grommet of some kind. Don't quite really know what else to call it, but basically it's the rubber seal that goes up against this face where the wires come out. Now it could be that rocking. Let's just see what the blue tack reveals. Flat. Hasn't touched it. So we know There's no indent on that. So we know that it's not reaching and scuffing on the actual inside of the casing. I'm going to put a little bit more on there, just to see how much we have got. Just build it up a little bit more. Can you see that, guys? And I'm going to run a dry fit again now, just to see. So the magnets don't snatch it. You can still get a rock, but I'm convinced it's down here. And don't forget the gasket's not on yet as well. So that's another important factor. Okay, let's pull it off and see if we've touched that blue tack. No. So clearly there is a massive clearance between the top of that bolt and the base of the casting there. Right down in the bottom, between the stator, or in the middle of the stator. Which is a good thing. So that means I haven't got to turn the spacer down. So, let's have a think about what we're going to do next. I think what I will do is probably tighten this one up. Probably tighten that one up. Gonna have a think about that one, but I'll come back to you later. Right, chaps, back on the crank, back on the stator, the rotor and the gear for the starter motor as well. This has all been done. What I've done is I've torqued this up. I went about this in a slightly different way. Normally on the Kawasaki ones, which are on here, you have two holes in them. I expect a lot of you guys have seen that. It's not unusual to see that on many bikes, but they have the two holes in there. There's a special tool. I haven't got the tool, even if I had the original rotor. I haven't got that tool. So what I've done is the people that make this particular rotor, they've left a lug on here. I don't know if you can see that very well. There's like a silver raised lug on there. And what I've done is I propped a screwdriver on some blocks. And what we've got here, if we look at that a bit closer, what we've got here is a way of wedging it. It can't go anywhere. And the screwdriver's down on those blocks. So I can then put my weight on the bike through the handlebars, pulling it down and torque it up. Now the bike tries to lift, but it's not a big deal because you can pull down on the bars. And with this torque wrench, which is set at 94 foot per pound, I just managed, with all my weight, I've just managed to get it to click. So there's a lot of torque which goes into that bolt. And I've also, as Kawasaki say, I've also put some thread lock on that bolt, semi-permanent thread lock. So with a bit of heat, it would probably come off. Anyway, that's all been done. This is the way I do it. It's not for everybody. It's personal choice the way you go about torquing this up. But this is a handy way of doing it with this particular rotor, because it allows you to lock it there with the screwdriver in the woods, as I demonstrated earlier. So that's it there. I'm going to leave that bit there. We've torqued it down and I'll be back later. Just come back with another point. What we've done at the moment, which I nearly forgot, is to put the starter gear in, the idler gear. We can see the way that works. The starter motor comes through this hole here, meshes into that gear, which turns that gear, which turns this gear, which is on the Sprag Bearing, which we talked about earlier, which then turns the crankshaft. Once the engine's running, this freewheels. It's known as a Sprag Bearing, or sometimes a kinetic clutch. I do believe, correct me if I'm wrong, leave a comment below. Quite happy to take any further information about that, but I'm pretty sure that's what they call it. This is all in there now. It's all oiled up. So now all we have to do is close up. I'll be back in a minute. Right, folks, back again. Just to recap, this is all now sealed. Took a while to fathom out which bolts are which, because I couldn't find the lengths of these bolts in the manual. It's probably there somewhere, but they're all giving me about so much thread, so I know that they're going to do their job. We have taken the advice of Kawasaki. After all, they built and designed the bike. We put sealant around here, quite a bit of it. Not so much it's going to cause a problem getting into the oil ways, etc, because that would be crazy. But we put sealant around there to give that a good seal. The other thing I've done is lined up the casing. First of all, when I put it on, it wouldn't quite line up with the idler gear shaft, which protrudes in here. So I took it apart again, had a look at it, and I think it was just where it wasn't lined up to get home into the hole, to the mounting hole. But that's all done now. And the starter motor, cleaned the starter motor shaft, oiled it all up, greased up the O-ring. The O-ring looks okay. There's not a lot of oil that gets up around there anyway, so we should be all right. If not, I will take it apart and put another O-ring in. But getting hold of that O-ring, I don't believe that O-ring comes in the gasket kit, so it might be tricky. But we'll see how we go with that. Well, as I said, it's all greased up. And I'm going to close this up now. Wiring is plugged in for the alternator. That's all down there, all done and dusted. I've not put the tags on because the threads, I'm a bit worried about the threads in the casings which hold the tags. Don't think there's a lot more I can do there, but I think we should be all right. Anyway, I'll be back later.